The tell me about yourself interview question is one of the most confusing and anxiety-provoking questions for mid-career professionals, especially folks with a lot of experience, but it is the most important one to nail. In this video, I'm going to break down why it's so important, exactly how I would structure the team A, as I like to call it, for an interview I had coming up, and the number one mistake I see job candidates make every single time with this question. Make sure you stay to the end because the structure I walk through in part 3 is the one that my clients use to completely transform their interview experience. If you're a mid-career professional who struggles with interviewing and you're tired of not knowing why, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell because I post new videos all about interviews every single week. I'm Madeline, a PhD candidate in organizational psychology, and I research effective interviewing. I'm also a job interview coach that helps mid-career professionals understand where they're going wrong in their interviews, and especially explaining the psychology of interviewing. Here's something that most people don't realize heading into the interview. The outcome is determined in the very beginning of that interview, and we're going to unpack why. So think about the last time that you met someone at a networking event or some kind of party. That information you gleaned from them in the first 30 seconds was so valuable because it created this whole image of who you think they are. Now, whether that is correct is not yet determined. However, the information, the cues that people are giving off, are they confident? Are they competent? Do they sound arrogant? Are they shy? Are they insecure? All of that then leads us to interpret how we think they are in other environments and other situations. What's key with the interview is that the hiring manager has this first impression of you based on your resume, based on your application. And so they've conjured up this picture of who you are. And now when you come to the interview, they're trying to match whether this person who they think you are, the image that they have of you, is actually who you say you are. And this is why the tell me about yourself question is so important to nail in interviews because it's that opening statement where they're going to interpret, okay, this is a confident candidate who knows what they're talking about, or, oh, this is someone who's really insecure, they sound hesitant, they feel like looks like they don't even know why they're here. Those two differences are going to then put the interview on very different tracks. So there's this psychological phenomenon called the primacy effect or primacy. And this is the idea that we remember information in a sequence best at the beginning. So it is, again, it's based on that first impressions idea. There's also something called the recency effect, which is where we also remember information that was conveyed at the end. So this is why in an interview, your opening and your closing statements or responses are so key. What happens in the middle is important, but it's less absolutely pivotal than starting off with a really good, strong first impression and ending with a strong first impression. The tell me about yourself question is one of those interview questions that I think requires the most amount of work to practice, to convey smoothly, and yet you want it to look the most effortless. You don't want it to look really awkwardly structured, really rigid. It's that natural, I'm just sharing who I am, this is all about me, and navigating that balance, making it look effortless, is actually what requires the most amount of work. So before I share the exact structure that I would use, I need to flag the number one mistake I see job candidates make. Even folks who are super competent, they've got a lot of job experience. The issue is the chronological resume dumping. So maybe you've done this. Let me know in the comments down below if this is something you're guilty of. But when you're asked, okay, so tell me about yourself. You then start with, in 2007, I got my degree and I did for my internship, and then I went here, and then I went here. And you're basically walking through your resume that the interviewer most likely has in front of them, and you're going in a very sequential, chronological order. This is not good. And the reason for that is because the interviewer has your resume in front of them. So they know where you went to school, what timeline you worked here and here. The reason people often feel that they have to do this chronological sequence is because they're like, what if I miss something? Especially mid-career professionals with a lot of experience. Maybe you've got some really great companies you've worked for. You're like, how can I possibly not include this information? What you want to do instead is view this question as a highlight reel of your life. You are simply spotlighting different experiences that you want them to remember. So, tying back to the primacy effect, you want to land or lodge these things in their brain so that they have a really good sense of, oh, yes, that was the person who worked there. Because if you walk chronologically, everything's going to sound the same. I did this, and then I did this, and then I went here, and then I found myself here. No one cares. Instead, you got to highlight and choose the most specific, important, pertinent information that you want them to remember after the interview's over. Let me know in the comments down below if your current teammate, tell me about yourself, sounds like a highlight reel or sounds like a resume review. And maybe it's something in between, but if you feel that the resume chronological sequence is where you're at, then the rest of this video is definitely for you. Oftentimes, what I find is job candidates actually panic in the tell me about yourself question because maybe they've prepared something and now they can't remember any of the details under pressure, or when they're asked such a broad question and they haven't fully prepared for it, they just go blank for whatever reason. And so if this is something that resonates with you, grab my anti-blanking guide, which I've linked in the descriptions down below. This will walk you through why our brain blanks under pressure and what's really going on there, and then some strategies and tips for how to overcome that moving forward. Okay, now you know why this question matters and what not to do. Let's unpack the structure that I really like for this type of question that can be adapted to so many different types of roles. Before we dive into that though, I want to acknowledge the fact that you've probably searched on YouTube how to answer tell me about yourself question and realized there's a lot of different frameworks out there. So there is no perfect way to answer this question. What's going to be perfect is what you remember in the moment. As well, when it comes to tell me about yourself, that's a very specific question, which is different from the interviewer asking, walk me through your resume. They're asking you to walk me through your resume, that's what you do. Or if they're being more specific about, okay, tell me about your current role, that's again different from tell me about yourself. So that is the specific interview question that we're answering right now. Big picture wise, what you want to remember with this question is how do you want them to remember you? So again, think of that spotlight on your resume, and the spotlight's not going to last forever. It's going to shine on just a couple of things. What do you want them to be? The framework that I like is present, past, future. And I'm going to elaborate why this is a little bit different than what you might expect. So with the present, this is where you're starting off with your current role. And if you're not working right now, what was your last current role? So let's just say, hi, I'm Madeline. I'm a job interview coach for mid-career professionals, and I'm currently doing my PhD in organizational psychology. So boom, that one's fine. That's the present. And then you're going to the past. With the past, you were highlighting 3 strengths that actually match on to what the job description is looking for. And then you're spotlighting how you have those strengths. And so this is going to require a decent amount of preparation. First of all, you got to look at that job description and pinpoint what kind of character, personality, competency, skill are they looking for. So say, for example, I'm applying for an HR role, let's just say. I know that they're looking for someone who, actually, let's say a recruiting role. Recruiting in HR. They're looking for someone who is good at talking with strangers and feeling comfortable with that. They're probably looking for someone who's organized and maybe someone who's efficient. So those are the key 3 strengths that I'm going to highlight. So that kind of fits into the present, actually. So present is current job description or current role and my 3 strengths. So you're saying something like, blah, 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 I'm doing my PhD in organizational psychology, and The three strengths that I bring to this role and I want to highlight are being able to talk with anyone under the sun, being able to be really organized and efficient. And so I just like to highlight some of the ways that I have built those skills. And that's when you're spotlighting the resume. So that's when I would describe how I developed those skills. So maybe I would say I've done a lot of teaching and used to speaking with new people all the time. And for organization, I say I've done a lot of project management tasks and timeline planning and building that out at XYZ company, XYZ role. And so you get the sense of, okay, spreading out that experience. So I worked here and gained that experience. I worked there, gained that experience. I'm not walking through every single thing I've done. I'm not walking through every single skill set I've developed. But this part takes a lot of planning. You can't really wing this on the spot unless you know your experience so well that it doesn't really matter and you can talk about yourself all day. Fantastic. That's awesome. So we talked about the present, we talked about the past. And so now for the future, this is where a lot of people I find struggle with wrapping up their answer. The future is, where are you going? Why are you applying for this job? And I really like the idea of, why are you sitting in this chair? Because what often happens is people will go through that resume, share that experience, and then be like, okay, now what? Like, how do I wrap this up? Why are you sitting in this chair? Seat. If you're on Zoom, why are you here? I'm applying for this role because this and this really stood out for me. I loved this part of the organization. I've been following you for a long time, and that's who I am and why I'm applying. And I think you can end it different ways. So you can say, this is why I'm applying for the role, and this is a bit about me. And these are some of the strengths I bring to this role, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of the interview. Whatever happens, you're opening up with like the future. And so whether that's, you should always be thinking about, why are you applying for this role? Why are you interested in working at this organization? Something that is future oriented, that's key to end on. So that's my structure for the tell me about yourself, including past, present, future, strengths-based approach, plus why the team A is so important and what not to do when you're structuring your response. If you're a mid-career professional who struggles with interviewing, whether it's because of interview anxiety or you don't know, you simply are tired of not understanding where you're going wrong with interviews, check out my interview confidence system below. This is where I help mid-career professionals really understand the psychology of interviewing, especially how interview anxiety can affect you mentally, how you're showing up, why you blank out under pressure. That'll be linked in the description below. And remember that the structure of your interview answers is only half the battle. The most important piece is the mindset you have walking into each interview. And so watch my next video where I discuss the 3 mindset shifts that help my clients go from struggling with interview anxiety, not knowing what they're doing well, to confidently feeling so much better walking into every interview.